To the person who is married but says that they are in love with someone else.
Okay, and what do we want to talk about with that person?
Maybe just a little bit about, you know, why they are thinking that way. To people not in an affair, and when I know this was new to me. That the whole concept of limerence and all of that, I knew nothing about it. So maybe just explaining a little bit about what the person who is going through the affair, what they're thinking.
Okay. Now, the reason that I can speak to this very specifically is because many, many years ago, I left my wife, Alice, for another woman. We actually divorced. I divorced Alice to be with the other woman. 3 years after divorcing Alice, we put it back together and I remarried her, and we've been married, at the time of this recording, in a couple of weeks it'll be 31 years. But it does put me in a position where that I understand a lot about what people feel and what they're going through because I've been there. The thing Allison ought to remember is that there are different kinds of extramarital affairs, and for some people who are watching us, the extramarital affair, if you're the one who is in it, for some people it's primarily because of the fact of, it's sexually motivated.
Right.
Sometimes people talk about things that they call sex addicts, for example. As a sexologist, I don't use that phraseology. I don't call people sex addicts. And I don't need to get into all the reason to explain why. If people want to use that phrase, it doesn't bother me whatsoever. But I prefer to talk about people who have compulsive sexual problems. Okay. And there are some great resources out there. And if your infidelity, if your affair is based on the fact that you have a sex drive that seems to be out of control, in the sense that you're looking for constantly looking for new partners, then we can help you with your marriage. But when it comes to that particular aspect, you're really going to need to find some help beyond what we do. Now, we can help you, and we have coaches that'll do all kinds of great things for you. As a matter of fact, a little later, we'll tell you more about our coaches. But you can go to some websites such as, if you want a secular resource to help you, go to sexhelp.com, SEXHELP.com. It's not a porn site. It's actually associated with Patrick Carnes, who's kind of like the granddaddy of the guys and gals who deal with sex addicts, if you want to use that phrase. And on there, you can actually take one of their tests to see if you are what they would call a sex addict. Actually, for those of you who are married to a person that you think may or may not be a sex addict, there's a test you can actually take on your spouse on that same site. And then they can refer you to counselors and therapists that they've trained around America that they validate. They have vetted. They've trained them. They say, these are people that can help you with that. If you prefer a religious source, there's one that's outstanding. It's great. It's called XX Church. Actually, it's 3 X's. XXXchurch.com. Pretty sure it's .com. You might want to check .org. I should have checked it before we came on the air. But it's XXX Church. Yep. XXXCHURCH. And I'm pretty sure it's .com. If not, try .org. And they come at it from a faith-based perspective. And they've got some great materials for both husbands and wives.
They do.
But because you talk to the people on the phone, that the kind of affair that we most often deal with is not just sexual. As a matter of fact, didn't start that way typically.
Right.
Started as a relationship. So if that's you, if you're the person who is involved with somebody else, like I never ever would have thought that I was the guy who would have cheated on his wife or the gal who would have cheated on her husband, and yet here I am in this situation where I am, quote, madly in love with this other person. That's the one that we see most often, and that's the one that we deal with most often. I understand the tremendous amount of emotion that you feel. I also know that you, in all likelihood, did not mean to get into this situation. It started off as a friendship. You guys communicated with each other, and in the course of that, you found yourself attracted to him or her, of course, and it was reciprocal. Attraction came back the other way. But as you were communicating with each other, you began to be very, at least over time, began to be very transparent, very open, very honest with each other, even more so at some point than you are now with your spouse. You may have been that open and transparent with your spouse somewhere back along the line, but now it's with this person. And as you've shared your fears, your dreams, your weaknesses, your strengths, your frustrations, your desires, as you talk so openly and honestly, it's like nobody in my life have I ever been able to explain myself to who got me, who understood me like this person does. It's like, and I think that's where people in the modern day time use the phrase soulmate. If you go back into mythology, soulmate meant something totally different. But I think now they use the word soulmate to refer to the fact that it's like this person was made for me. I was made for him or made for her. And this connection is just absolutely beyond description. I can't even explain it to other people because I don't know if anybody else has ever felt what I felt or what I'm feeling now. And it becomes this intense relationship that almost always becomes sexual, but not always. Sometimes it stops short of that. We typically call those things emotional affairs. But the sex then is not really about the sex. Although, and I'm talking now to the people who are in this situation, if it has become sexual, you have felt a deeper sexual connection than you have felt in some time. But it's not really because of the sex. It's because of that emotional development that you've already created with each other, where you really are trying to connect in every shape, fashion, or form. And you're thinking, wow, nobody else has even felt this before. I can't even begin to describe what this feels like. I'm in love beyond anything I knew that love could be. By the way, if you're the spouse listening and watching, and I'm describing your spouse right now, I know that you don't like what I'm saying. I know that you're thinking, good grief, just rip my heart out and stomp on it. I mean, that's kind of how you felt at one time. If I've been saying that to you, right?
Yeah, it was definitely just gut-wrenching. But I will tell you that at the same time as that it's so hard to hear, I felt relief because it showed me that I wasn't the only one. Because so many times we're going through these things and we're thinking, you know, we're the only one that's experienced this pain. We're the only one who our spouse is saying these horribly hard things to. So the first time that I, heard about Marriage Helper and read the resources online, and it was my gut reaction was relief because it was the thing with limerence and these relationship affairs is it's almost just like a textbook checklist that you can go down with things that people say.
Yeah, and I'm glad it gave you hope, and I'm glad you guys put it back together. I really am. I'm not only like you, I like your husband. I really do. He's a neat guy. But at the time, I considered killing him.
Oh, the thought crossed my mind once or twice.
Not because of what he felt, but because sometimes those of us who are in that situation can do some mean things. Now, I'm not saying that he necessarily did mean things to you, but I definitely did mean things to Alice. If you're thinking, what do you mean? Well, again, I'm talking now to the person in the situation. Allison's mentioned already a couple of times the word limerence. I'm probably not going to talk a lot about that in this particular session. You can find out more about that on our website, marriagehelper.com, marriagehelper.com. We've done all kinds of podcasts and everything else about it. But right now, since I'm talking to you who feels this, I know what you're feeling because I felt it. And I don't know how strong and powerful it was. And if anyone at that time in my life had looked at me and said, that's not love, I would have told them what they were full of. And it would have been a Southern pronunciation of a word. And I would have been very clear. You don't get it. This is love. And it is. It is a kind of love. And again, to the spouses who's, my spouse is in this thing, don't tell me he or she loves that person. One thing we will always do is tell the truth, even when it's painful. We just don't know any other way to do it, to be what we're supposed to be and to help you. It is a kind of love, but if you're the person who's in it right now, and I understand and I know the intensity of what you're feeling, I'm going to tell you something that you're not going to believe right now, probably. Don't want to believe and think, if somebody's full of something, it's you, Dr. Beam, because you don't get it. Actually, I do get it. I've been there. I know what it feels like. Not only that, and since then I've dealt with thousands and thousands of couples, and well, let's just say individuals like you who've been there. And in the social sciences, we can actually measure and identify different kinds of love. Now, I don't want to get into that now. It's not really what we need to talk about. Let's just say we can measure different kinds of love. One kind of love we don't ever try to measure is what people call true love. And the reason we don't try to measure that is because true love is whatever a person feels at the moment. And since that's so unique and so individualized, it's not something in the social sciences we can actually measure. So we have other names for different aspects of it. And as Allison alluded to, the kind of love that you feel right now, the word we use for that is limerence. So I'm not going to describe limerence so much, just to tell you that hopefully by what I've said so far, you know that I understand what you're feeling. And know, first of all, from experience, but if it were just my experience, that would be an anomaly. Not just my experience, but the experience of thousands and thousands upon of people with whom we have worked, and tons and tons of research in the social sciences, some of my own, and some from people all around the world. As a matter of fact, recently I've been reading back through another few hundred articles I've downloaded that mention the word limerence and looking to see what else people have found and discovered. There's a lady named Helen Fisher. She's an anthropological biologist, for example, PhD, Dr. Fisher, who's done a lot of research about it as well. And we know that what you're feeling is real, and it is a kind of love, but we know for a fact it's going to end. Now, I know you don't believe that, or if you do believe it, you don't want to believe it because of the fact, but no, nobody's ever felt like this, and I'm going to feel like this for the rest of my life. And I know that's what you're thinking and feeling. I do. I get it. Like I said, been there. Don't need to keep telling you that, but I have been there. But one thing about this kind of love, and the reason we can actually put a name to it and measure it, is because it inevitably has an end. And there's some reasons for it biologically. There's some reasons for it in terms of anthropology. There's even reasons for it if you're an evolutionist. Don't have time to explain all that right now, except to say we know that what you're feeling right now, that's amazing if you're in the middle of it, will at some point begin to fade. Not only yours, but the person with whom you were, quote, madly in love, end quote, that person, it will actually at some point begin to fade with him or her as well. And when it comes back down, you're going to start looking at things differently than you do now. So here's the message I hope that you hear and believe, or at least will consider. The decisions you make when you're in the height of that emotion that you're feeling right now, thinking, I'm making decisions because this is the way I'm going to feel for the rest of my life, is not really the way it's going to be. You're making a decision thinking this is the way I'm going to feel for the rest of my life, and the documentation is ample. The experiences of others is plentiful. I know you believe you're going to feel like that for the rest of your life, but you're not. And then when you get down here, when that intensity finally fades, and it will, when it does, you're going to look back at the decisions you made up here and realize that some of the decisions you made thinking you were going to feel like this, or that the other person was going to feel like this forever, led you to make some decisions that caused you pain in where you're going to be, and pain for other people that care about you and love you. Now, I don't have time to explain all of that. I'm hoping that I'm saying enough about it that at least you get intrigued and want to know more. And if you want to be sending some questions in to ask us about it, we'd be glad to answer those questions if we can. And we'll talk about some other things as well as we go through this. But what I'm trying to tell you is, I know. As a matter of fact, many people on our staff know because they have been right where you have been. And even people like Allison here knows because that's where her husband has been, that she's, and both he and she are open and transparent to talk about. And if you ever want to talk to somebody who is not going to be judgmental toward you, who's going to try to understand. You say, well, what if I call and I get Allison and she was the spouse and her husband went through that, she won't be compassionate. I think that you will you not?
Oh, I have huge compassion. I had compassion for my husband when he was walking through it. And it's another one of the great things that I've learned through Marriage Helper. And the question is, is your spouse a good person doing a bad thing or a bad person doing a bad thing? And I quickly could answer that I knew my husband was a good person doing a bad thing. And
you understand, from Allison's standpoint, the bad thing was he's cheating on me. So you understand how she would say that, right? Okay,
right, yes, he was cheating, yes. And so we absolutely have compassion for anyone that calls in and is seeking advice, because we know that, you're in a hard spot. You're seeking help and you're looking for answers, and it's our job to point you in the give you resources to help guide you and point you in a direction of hopefully towards reconciliation for your marriage. But there's no judgment at all.
Well, we hope that's what happens because
Right.
that's why we exist. But at the same time, we don't try to force you to do that either.
Right.
We try to understand what you feel, and most of us here do, and we will help you with all the resources we possibly can. And of course, our nonprofit exists to help people reconcile their marriages. But if you call us, we're not going to twist your arm to do that. We're going to offer you a lot of really good resources and a
Right.
lot of understanding, but we're going to accept you making your own decision. Now, if you're the other spouse watching going, well, what good is that? You're not going to help me at all.
Right.
Understand that we also help you and we care about you. And by the grace of God, if you wind up coming to our workshop, for example, we've been doing that particular workshop since 1999. Now, it continually gets better because we continually add new stuff to it as we learn more.
Yeah.
So it's not exactly the same workshop it was in 1999. It's a better workshop than it was in 99. But what we see is that, according to some research done by a professor at Augusta State University, is that 7 years later, 77% of those couples are still together. So it does help people solve their problems, work things out, and stay together. So if you're the spouse thinking, where's my hope? What we offer actually does that for 3 out of 4 couples that come to our workshop. But if you're the spouse who's saying, but wait a minute, I'm not going to come there for you guys to beat me up and make me stay married, that's not our approach. Our approach is to understand you, to accept you as you are, to teach a lot of good things from which we hope you make your decisions, but we're going to be your friends and love you no matter what. So if it sounds like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, I'm not. It's just something that works by accepting what people feel
Right.
rather than telling them what to feel.
Right.
Teaching rather than commanding, this is what you have to do.
Right.
We don't use guilt. We don't beat people up. We're all for saving marriages, but if you're the person who's in the affair, you're never going to find a group of people anywhere, I don't think, that'll understand you better than we do and who'll be kinder and nicer to you and respectful to you any more than we are. And if your other spouse saying, but I want to save the marriage, what about me? We also are on your side just as much, and we'll do all we can to help you guys do that, but never in a heavy-handed way.
No, that's what the workshop is such, I don't know any other word to describe it, but it is such a safe environment for everyone that walks in, whether, no matter which side of you're on for your marriage, whether you're standing for it or whether you're got, both feet out the door. That's the thing that we hear over and over again with the people that come to our workshop is, no one is here to twist your arm. We're here just to present information to you, and what you do with that is completely up to you. So yeah, it's an incredible environment that's created at the workshops.
Right.